My name's Eli Goldstein. I run No One Asked, but this kind of came from the idea that I've kind of taught my friends and families off to the point of where they're like, that should be your title, because it's usually happens. But so obviously this past Tuesday we had some elections, and while the results themselves might not have been unexpected in terms of the winners, the margins were crazy. Like I think it was like 13 points or 14 points in New Jersey and Virginia. New Jersey was even more unexpected because that was meant to be like within 1 to 3 points. It was like really supposed to be really close, according to all the pundits, who are now all claiming that they predicted this all along, and of course, because they're trying to keep their jobs and keep relevancy. But and then obviously we saw Georgia have two major elections statewide for the first time in 20 years. Democrats got elected. All across the country, local elections, small elections, Prop 50 obviously got passed. Which California's not known for their lack of ballot referendums on the ballot. So the fact that people showed up in 9 million, I think it was, to vote for no people, just a ballot referendum was amazing. I think I heard a Pod Save America last night that 7% of Trump supporters from 2024 supported Spanberger and Sherrill, 9% Mamdani, and 12% Prop 50. That is a big swing. So what is your take on all these election results and what they mean for normal legislative affairs for Donald Trump, and obviously going to 2026?
I think we're going to spend a lot of time slicing and dicing through the numbers and trying to get a handle on it. And look, I think it's forming a little bit of a political Rorschach test for members of the Democratic Party who have a little bit of a pre-existing case to make. If you're on the more progressive side of the ledger, you're looking at the results in New York and you're saying, hey, Zohran Mamdani is a self-avowed Democratic socialist who won with a pretty healthy margin. And he drove record turnout, the biggest turnout in the city since the 1960s. This is proof positive that a progressive, an unapologetic progressive, can win and can do what progressives have been saying is really the winning formula across the country. Let's drive turnout. Let's excite our base. Let's give people a reason to show up. On the other hand, people who are more from the centrist, moderate wing, the mainstream wing of the Democratic Party, are looking at the results and saying, well, gee, I mean, you've got Sherrill, you've got Spanberger, you've got self-avowed moderates walking away with strong, really strong margins.
Almost double what Mamdani did in New York City.
Almost double what Mamdani did. Now, look, my personal take on it is I don't want to take away anything. Well, to your point, I'll just cite Nate Cohn in the New York Times, who found an overall 7% Trump flip margin for Spanberger and Sherrill. Flipping 7% of Trump voters in 1 year is a pretty remarkable achievement. It doesn't sound like a lot, but in today's hyper-polarized, negatively polarized politics, that is a BFD, as former President Biden would say. So, look, I mean, my takeaway on it is not to take anything away from Zohran Mamdani. I think there's a lot to admire and learn from in his campaign. I don't believe that he won because he's a Democratic socialist. I think he won for other reasons, for other things that he did well, focusing like a shark with a frickin' laser beam on its head on affordability, trying a little bit of this, a little bit of that, talking about halal-flation, freezing the rents, free public transit, trying to deal with people's cost of living, dealing with the core problem in people's lives. That's the leitmotif that connects the dots across.
I would agree, because if you look at other races like Minneapolis mayor race and also the Seattle mayor race, where there were two other very progressive Democratic Socialist candidates in Omar Fada and Katie Wilson, who kind of connected themselves to Mamdani's insurgent campaign in New York City. They both lost by about 6 to 8 points. I can't remember the exact margin. So I
would think someone from your generation would say 6-7, but sure.
Yeah. Oh gosh. My friends call me the resident boomer of our group, so I kind of I have some just connect with the 6-7 group. But but like the thing is, so I think you're right about the Democratic Socialist was not necessarily the major thing, and I think that if Democrats start to take that lesson from the Mamdani win, we could be in a really tough spot in 2026 and 2028, because I think that we kind of recovered from the insurgent wing of during 2020, during the defund the police movement. I think we kind of finally got away with that. And you even saw Mamdani, he moved away from his 2020 comments about being more anti-police, that he's now moved far away from and kind of embraced Jessica Tisch with an open bear hug, which has honestly angered some people in his coalition. But he's been cutting down on crime, so he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so I think
but I think there's a good news version of this. I think there's a good news version of this for Democrats, which is if you look at that connective tissue between New Jerk. There you go. I was about to say New Jersey. New Jerk works. Let me tell you, as a native New Yorker, I think New Jerk works for the Garden State. If you look at the connective tissue between New Jersey, Virginia, and New York, you do see that affordability message, right?
Yeah.
And so there are two positive proof points we can take from this. One is we can run on a message that's not all Trump all the time and win. And that's got to be scary for the Republican Party. Number two is we don't necessarily have to go to internal circular firing squad style war against ourselves as a Democratic Party. Like, oh, the progressives are wrong. No, the moderates are wrong. We could actually align on some core things that we all agree on.
The themes that were talked about were the same. The solutions to address those themes were different. Like, there was no government-funded grocery stores in Virginia and New Jersey raised, but obviously New York City raised there was. And things, we don't know what solution's going to end up working. It's going to probably matter depending on each state, and each city is going to be different. You can't do the same thing in New York City as you can do in New Jersey, and vice versa. Well, maybe New Jersey is...
Amen to that.
The thing is, and nor would you want to. There's different economies. The thing is, New York City is kind of its own country on its own, based on the economic stuff, the foreign policy aspect of it, with NATO being there and other United Nations, not NATO, United Nations being there and other things like that. And I think that Mamdani I think there was a lot of, even if you didn't like Mamdani, there was a pretty nasty homophobic campaign being run against him. And it only boosted him, because I think that when you have Cuomo, which is the poster child of the Democratic establishment, or just the establishment in general, being coupled with Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, Elon Musk, and all the billionaires that everyone hates, being like, let's go against the person who's against billionaires, it's going to make his case stronger. And I watched all three debates. I personally was not as impressed with Mamdani's debate style. I think that it could have, he kind of danced around the issues, but I think his ground game, his focus on inflation and affordability was stellar, and more Democrats could learn from that. Obviously, Spanberger and Shale did the same thing. I think there was a lot of anger at Jeffries for not endorsing Mamdani sooner, and Schumer not endorsing Mamdani at all. I personally have the view that endorsements don't really matter. And I think that, again, to your circular firing squad point, getting mad at the current two leaders of the Senate and House Democrat for now, we'll see. I personally have issues with Schumer's leadership, or lack thereof, depending on the day. I think he's been doing well during the shutdown. I think he's been doing impeccable during the shutdown. He's been dealing with more rank and file members wanting to break, but they seem to be united right now at this moment. Last time I checked, 10 minutes ago, before I got on with you, who knows? It's a shocking array of unity among Democrats right now. I think it's because we demolished the GOP on Tuesday, and there's we don't want to screw the voters over after they showed up for us. So I think that, what do you think? Where do you think the Democrats need to go in terms of legislative strategy, in terms of dealing with the shutdown and just other issues? Since obviously we don't have too much power, but what do you think we should be doing to keep this momentum up until 2026?
Well, a couple quick thoughts. First of all, just to address, comment in the chat here from Fufara and Chiquita. I love people's handles. I just freaking love them. Point well taken about Donald Trump's lies about the economy and tariffs. I think that's the backdrop behind all of this. Obviously, Trump is the 800-pound orange gorilla in the room that's driving and warping the gravity around every single issue. So, of course, people are responding to an affordability message, but it's against this backdrop of what he's done on tariffs, what he's done to the economy, and the deep disappointment that people are feeling. They hired this guy. Now, I'm not talking about the MAGA base. I'm talking about the voters who flipped from Biden or from back in Obama to Trump in 2024. They hired this guy because of affordability. And what they got was, this is a Republican friend of mine, a Republican pollster, who I was talking to earlier today, said, look, why should we have to? We
Yeah,
hired him to fix a problem. He's not fixing the problem. Why should we have to put up with the rest of his
yeah,
bullshit? And I think if he's picking up that that vibe from within his own party, that tells you something about what's driving this election. So to your question, what should the Democrats do? I think for one thing, we should recognize the model from ancient Greece, where you have a unifying foe that you're facing together. You're a bunch of little island city states. Stay unified, right?
yeah.
Stay unified and take on the dreaded Persian Empire. No diss on my Persian friends. Take on the dreaded Persian Empire as one unified fighting force. That's what we have to do. We have to stop fighting the Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, whatever. You know what? You're all my allies in the fight to save the republic. So
Yes,
let's worry about that later. I think that's number one. Number two, yes, the shutdown is working. I am not with the people who say, like, well, this is working for us. Let's keep it rolling as long as possible. Public opinion is fickle on these kinds of
yes.
things. And
As
now
we
that
enter
they're
Thanksgiving, if people start feeling like their relatives can't be coming for Thanksgiving because their flights have been canceled, maybe even it's because the GOP's been encouraging canceling flights anyway. People are going to then start blaming Democrats, I think, very quickly. So I think that I'm personally of the view that we have to end it within the next week and a half. But I also do think that Republicans are more willing to cave because you're already starting to see Trump. He did the night of the election, the shutdown is the reason why we lost. How stupid is Donald Trump to say that from a Republican political standpoint, to say the shutdown is why we lost and we are losing because of our keeping the government shut down. And then he's like getting rid of Lil Heap with the energy pricing for a lot of rural Americans and poor Americans. Obviously, SNAP, obviously, ACA credits. This is not a good strategy long term. The question is how Democrats hold on long enough to get here. And I think that we've
Yeah,
seen like,
I
like
mean,
enough.
I think that's right. I think that's right. And I think this has always been a calculated gamble about what the pain point would be that would cause the other side to crumble. Now, there was a betting pool going on inside the White House prior to the shutdown, and the money was on a very fast Democratic Party fold, and no one in the White House betting pool had it going longer than 10 days. Now, I wrote two articles in Newsweek and on my Substack, and thank you for the people who have joined and have subscribed, worthknowing.substack.com. I wrote two articles for Newsweek about why this was a calculated strategic gamble for Democrats that they had to take, even
Yeah,
though odds were that they would lose in the short term in terms of public opinion. That has not panned out. They have not lost till now. So my advice to the Democrats is we're unified. Let's keep that going. We have a highly motivated base. It seems like the early cuts on the polling, the exit polling information coming out of the election shows that the turnout model may have been skewed because this is deep in the wonky weeds. I'll just go here for just a second. What pollsters were expecting was based on we have to adjust our turnout expectations based on what happened in 2024. And they're beginning to realize that that assumption was probably wrong, that the worm has turned, and that Democrats are a lot more likely to turn out at this
yeah,
point going into 2026. Things could always change.
yeah.
But I would advise my friends in the leadership, let's not dissipate that energy by fighting a battle past the point of winning. We have won on this battle. We have made our point. We have made a strong stand. Let's take the win while we're ahead and
I
before
think
we lose the mark.
I think that I believe that I heard there's going to be a vote later today that they're going to put on a supposed deal that just guarantees the process but not an outcome. So therefore, no ATA credits extended likely between Speaker Trump and President Trump. Johnson's just kind of there. Um, and like, I think Democrats are going to vote this out. I think that next week you'll see some sort of thing come out and you'll see the shutdown by end of next week. That's my prediction. I think that'll be good for and then you can give the party enough rope to hang themselves on this issue when they eventually just say, we're gonna increase your premiums. It's already going up, but we're not gonna do anything about it, because they'll get a vote. They'll vote down, and Democrats will be like, well, we tried. And we tried, you gave us some hope. The Republicans still didn't cave. Republicans still didn't give you the benefits that mostly benefit Trump supporters. And then we can use that. I think that we can try to get a deal in the next couple of days. I don't see Republicans budging. I can hope so, but you never know. It is weird when Marjorie Taylor Greene is more. It's weird when Marjorie Taylor Greene's being more liberal on the shutdown than John Fetterman. That's just odd to me. But it's odd.
Well, people should bear in mind that, and history bears this out, that government shutdowns almost a year out from an election, or really most issues that happen a year out from an election, bear very little on the outcome of that election. What we're seeing right now, it's a snapshot. It's like any form of polling, and this very, very off-year election is just a snapshot of where things are today. They're dynamic. They could move. They could move very, very quickly. And so I think, as much as it's tempting for those of us who do political analysis for a living to maybe over-index on what's happening with the shutdown right now or the election results we're seeing right now, I think we should all temper it a little bit. I don't think that the number one issue on voters' minds a year from now, when they're determining the outcome of the midterms, is going to be what happened in the shutdown. That said, it could be. We could still screw this up. The polling has held up remarkably well for Democrats, much better than my expectations when I wrote my day of the shutdown launch piece in Newsweek. We've held up remarkably well. In fact, if anything, in the last week or so, it's turned more against the Republicans as the impact of the premium increases in the ACA marketplace has started to be felt by people going shopping and discovering that they can't afford healthcare anymore. So at this point, I'm not saying that it's a win for Democrats, which feels like an awfully tough thing to say when you're talking about people going without food, people unable to travel,
I think that I saw there was a comment that Schumer made a few weeks ago that the Republicans jumped on, that he pretty much said every day gets better for us as the shutdown was going on. And Republicans were using it for a few days until they realized, guess what? The polling was still favorable, if you want to use that word, towards Democrats in terms of sympathy on the shutdown front and which side they sided with more. I don't think the shutdown is going to have much impact on voters next year, but I think the fact that we fought for healthcare and SNAP benefits and affordability while we were talking about the shutdown, that message is going to stick because it's about affordability and prices. That, I think, could continue, especially as things get worse and worse for Americans, because Trump decides that. I think Alex Wagner on the Pod Save America last night, when I saw it live, said that Trump is sadistic. And he is. I think that he doesn't care that he hurts his own supporters if it makes Democrats look bad, or attempting to make Democrats look bad in the shutdown. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how much longer Democrats hold on to this. I think that they can't hold on for a lot longer because of Thanksgiving coming up, and you don't want to ride this out so much that you lose the polling advantage on this. I think voters were like, okay, you have our attention. Now, clearly what Tuesday was about. Like, you have our attention. We want to support you. Now, what are you for? You've made clear that you're against Trump, and the shutdown's proven that you're for affordability, and these candidates also are. Now, what is your message as a party, not just individual candidates, but as a party? What's your message going into 2026 and 2028? And I think that Democrats have been focusing on primaries right now, like primarying fellow Democrats, whether it be um, the Democrat that just launched against Congressman Richard Torres in New York. It looks like Brad Lander might try to primary Dan Goldman in New York. Like, and they're trying to like primary people because either they view that they don't like them on things on Israel issues, or they think people are too old, or. And I think that I think I wrote a piece this morning about how I think that primarying is very. There should be real questions asked about, like, is there one in the district or the state that you're thinking about a primary? Is there one for that person to be primaried? Are they doing the work of being a congressman, voting the right way on the Democratic platform, and also doing good work in the district regarding casework and constituent outreach? If those things are being done, and especially if they're in a swing district, do not primary them. Do not do this purity test thing that I think Democrats have been focused on sometimes in the years. Like, obviously both sides primary. Like, you have people that try to primary out progressives, and you have people that try to primary out more so-called centrist people. I really hate the term centrist. I can't tell you how many times I heard that word. I don't know what it means. I think that you can be like a moderate and like I think you can be progressive and just be pragmatic and not want to like and actually like want to get things done. And I think that without just like saying things and being loud, but not actually getting it done. I think that there's plenty of pragmatic. Like, I wouldn't call Josh Shapiro a moderate. I would call him. He's done some pretty progressive things. Just he doesn't make huge big deals about it in the same way. He doesn't have the same slogans. I think that we don't necessarily need slogans. We need less slogans. I think, because I think slogans is where the Democratic Party gets into trouble. For example, abolish ICE, defund the police. That's when we kind of get into problems, because you can't put nuance in a slogan. It just doesn't work. So I think that oftentimes it just gets really, it just doesn't, we don't get a point across. So getting into the Republican side for a second, we're seeing a real rift occur between the Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell side of the party, which I never thought you'd put those three people together, but that side of the party, and then the Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, Heritage Foundation, Nazi side of the party that seems to, honestly, I think the Nazi side's kind of winning right now, if I'm going to be honest. Which I hate to say, but I hope it's not the case, because it's not good for the country. It's certainly not good for Jews. It's not good for any other minority group that will eventually come after. So what do you think? Who do you think is gonna be like? Who do you think is gonna win this battle when all is said and done? Like the Nazi side of the party, or the more establishment that seems to be fighting back hard against the Heritage Foundation and the two Nazi influencers into this battle for the soul of the party?
Well, hearing you talk about Democrats primarying Democrats over perceptions of being insufficiently progressive or insufficiently moderate reminds me a little bit of Albert Einstein's famous quip, where he said, "Do not concern yourself with your problems with mathematics. I assure you that mine are still greater." And that is the situation with the Republican Party. Yes, Democrats are having a rift that I have been part of for decades that really goes back to the beginning of the last century between the more progressive wing and the more moderate wing. That is true. That is a fight that when I was working on Capitol Hill, it was between Steny Hoyer and Nancy Pelosi. It was between blue dogs and progressives. It was between Bernie and Hillary. And it goes back deep into the 1900s between
Yeah,
the northern progressives and the southern conservatives, at the time racists.
yeah,
But I assure you that the problems on the Republican side
yeah,
are still greater. Now, they're masked a little bit right now because Trump has such a hammerlock on the party. But everything you just pointed out is a concern. And what I think Republicans just saw on Tuesday is not only something that they've known for a long time, which is when Trump's not on the ballot, they lose any benefit of MAGA-based turnout that they have when he's on the ballot, and that puts them in trouble. That puts them behind the eight ball. Not only did they see that, but they also see that they are developing a fundamental brand identity problem that's as deep and pervasive as the one on the Democratic side. And it's making them nervous. That's why you're seeing movement from John Thune on ending the shutdown. That's why you're seeing a little bit of divergence, even from people like Ted Cruz, who you put as part of the Donald Trump wing of the party, which is mostly true. But you are seeing some divergence. You're seeing Marjorie freaking Taylor Greene,
True.
calling out Donald Trump for being wrong on issues like ACA subsidies. And look no further than the bellwether race that I wrote up on the Worth Knowing Substack about a month ago. Joe Kahn, who was running for Bucks County District Attorney, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Now,
Yeah.
this is the swingiest of swing states in the swingiest of swing districts. Donald Trump won Bucks County. He won Bucks County in 2024 by 0.07 percentage points, less than 300 votes out of more than 400,000 votes cast. It's part of a congressional district. It's one of only 18 districts across the whole country that Joe Biden won in 2020 and yet is held by a Republican. It is the swingiest of swing territory, and it packs a punch, huge punch in Pennsylvania. And the Democrat just won, and he won going away. Why? Because there is a corruption scandal that reminds people, for his opponent, that reminds people of Trump's corruption scandals, and because of the underlying sense that he's picking up. And I interviewed him on Worth Knowing. The underlying sense that he's picking up in town halls and knocking doors and focus groups that people are tired of putting up with the bullshit. It goes back to what I said before. They hired Trump for one job: fix my cost of living. He's not doing that. Now, there were some secondary issues. People were unhappy with Democrats' position on the border. They
Yeah.
were unhappy with a sense that Democrats had gone too far toward woke progressivism. That's true. It shows up in polls. It shows up in polls from David Shore, okay, from progressive pollsters. There were three issues that drove the 2024 election. It was cost of living, immigration, and a perception of Democrats going culturally too far. That was it. And the sense now is, hey, Trump has gone way too freaking far on all this stuff, and he didn't fix my cost of living. And that's why you see results like the one in Bucks County. And that's why I say Republicans are having this kind of a fundamental schism problem. And they're beginning to contemplate their own political mortality once Trump leaves the scene in 2028.
Yeah, I think that like what you're saying with the rift between the non-openly racist Republicans and then the openly racist Nazi Republicans. So I wouldn't call Ted Cruz a non-racist person, but he just does it quieter than Nick Fuentes does, I think. I think that you're seeing a lot of people, they see Trump as a lame duck, especially after Tuesday. And I think that his attention to the fact that he's not going to be on the ballot because he keeps talking about a third term for some reason, because he keeps doing that, people keep thinking, like, oh, they keep remembering he's a lame duck, so then you have Marshall Green setting up a 2028 run for herself. Nick Fuentes, I think, is trying to make himself the power broker of who becomes the nominee on the GOP side. That's why you see J.D. Vance kind of distancing himself from his wife. And connecting himself, let's just say, more to Erica Kirk in a way that is deeply disturbing. Do not look at the photos, people, if you don't
mean physically, it's deeply disturbing the way they connected.
Yeah, it's like, okay, that's not a hug. That's something else that's happening there. Or once that the thing is, like, I feel obviously for that family. Obviously, they saw their husband and father massacred in front of the whole country. But it's been how long? And she's already putting her hands in the hair of the vice president who's married. It just seems a very quick mourning period to me. And the thing is, I think that that's an attempt to J.D. Vance is moving to Christianize Usha and saying that all these different things and kind of not actually being seen with Usha like at all in the last month or so, and then saying that the election results were due to Republican infighting. I'm assuming having to do with the Heritage Foundation defending Nazis thing, and then Republicans attacking the Heritage Foundation for that. I think it's all an attempt to endear himself to Nick Fuentes, who currently hates him because of his wife and their kids' skin color. And I think he's trying to get the Nazi vote of the GOP side so he can be the nominee in 2028. I don't know if it's going to work because unless he divorces her and marries Erica Kirk, I don't think it's really going to matter. And I think that would look so blatant at this point. What's going on if he did that? No one likes Vance. I don't think anyone does. The Republicans would tell you that like Vance, they don't. I don't think he's that much of a threat. He's a good debater, I will say. He did a really good job against Tim Ryan in 2022 when he ran for Senate. Well, also it's Tim Ryan, so what can you really do? But then he also beat Tim Walz in the debate in 2024.
Yeah.
But Tim Walz also didn't put up much of a fight during that debate. He kind of just let JD Vance lie and pretend like it was all sunshine and rainbows. So,
well, I think you bring up an interesting point that what we can expect, and Trump is leaning into this probably inadvertently in a very odd way. What we can expect to see as Trump transitions into true lame duck status. I was saying a moment ago that the party is beginning to contemplate the future. The opening salvos of the 2028 primary are getting fired right now. Now, you're seeing it mostly on the Democratic side with Gavin Newsom doing a bit of a victory lap after his California Prop 50 win. But you're seeing it on the Republican side, and Trump has set up this kind of team of rivals thing between Vance and Rubio. He's saying, well, the both of them, they're both strong candidates. Of course, there can be only one. I saw that in a documentary about the Highlander once. So one thing that we could be concerned about is Vance and Rubio starting to performatively try out to become the MAGA heir apparent. And it is worth being a little concerned about both of them trying to signal to the MAGA base that they are the rightful inheritor of the MAGA mantle. And that should be concerning because the way to earn that is to be more extreme.
yeah.
And I'm a little less concerned about, Vance and, like the weird interactions with Mrs. Kirk. I'm more concerned about, look, what I just wrote, this was a Newsweek piece that I also put on my Substack on Worth Knowing. What I just wrote in Newsweek earlier this week is that the best way to understand the Trump presidency is as a platform. He doesn't so much run an administration as he hosts one. It's become a plug and play for extremists, right? And what he's done, because he has no vision, no agenda, no policy goals, he's essentially just said, look, anyone who is willing to suck up and help me get further in getting money, power, and retribution can basically do whatever they want. He famously promised during the campaign to let RFK Jr. go wild on health, right? And that's something that he's followed through on, but not just with him, but with the other extremists, with Russell Vogt, right? Yep. It's actually pronounced Vogt. I was this week old when I found that out.
I don't know.
Stephen Miller.
I've heard the pronunciation.
Peter Navarro. Right. And all of these are people I think don't fully appreciate just how fringe and radical all of these people are, how disavowed they are by their own party, and how they've been given an immense amount of power. Peter Navarro is an outcast among economists. Republican economists do not believe that he understands economics.
He doesn't.
And yet he has been allowed to implement the most radical trade policy, tariff policy, which is really tax policy. I would say the most radical economic policy that we've seen in the U.S. since the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. And so that's what would concern me, is that this is already a platform for radicals. And two of the most powerful members of the administration, Rubio and Vance, are being set up to try to out MAGA each other
Yep.
in the next couple of years. That's a little worrying.
I would agree with that. I think that but I will say I think it's beneficial to Democrats because the thing is, whoever the candidate is, it's going to be someone that has to be really MAGA unless something dramatically changes in the next year or so. But who knows? Things are constantly changing. Marcia the Green's more liberal than John Fetterman. No one could have predicted that a year ago. But I think that Democrats will not have that same litmus test of moving to the left to get the nomination to the same degree at least. And I think they'll be able to talk more as I personally have the view that it has to be a governor. That's my personal view because I think they're the only ones that can really fight Trump effectively because they have power. Um, I'm partial to a Josh Shapiro or Andy Bashir or Westmore. That's kind of my top three. There's a lot of great governors out there. Gavin Newsom's starting to grow on me, but I don't know. I'm still a little uneasy about him. But so I think that they're going to have a lot easier ish. They're going to be oh, they're going to have their kind of campaign because several of them are up for re-election just next year. They're going to campaign on what they need to campaign on, while Republicans are going to have 3 years of pretty much what Kamala Harris had to deal with in 2024. They're going to have campaign things from the previous campaign that they have said that are going to hurt them, and they're going to try to distance themselves away from it, and they're not going to be able to. Just like Kamala Harris couldn't distance herself from comments and remarks and policies that she supported in 2020 when she ran unsuccessfully. But I think that that's going to help Democrats in the long term, as long as Democrats don't get rid of the litmus test on the Democratic primary side, whether it be foreign policy or cultural issues. I do not think that we need to betray our values as the party of civil rights and human rights and protecting minorities and stuff like that. I just don't think we need to focus on everything. Focus on bread and butter. Then if you're asked about various other cultural issues, you say what the Democratic Party line is, and then you move on. I think Democrats kind of sometimes get wrapped up into the attack ads aspect of it and then don't move on from it. And then
Well, look, I think that the guidance I would give to our fellow Democrats is you can't beat deplorables by being insufferables. And,
yes,
and there's a way to talk about your values without looking down your nose at people. Look, I'll tell you a very quick story, and I know we have to wrap this up pretty soon. I have a friend who is a public servant, public figure, candidate for office, liberal, and worked for the Human Rights Campaign during the fight for marriage equality.
wow,
And he used to talk about their approach. This was back when the polling on this was 2/3 against, 1/3 for. And then it flipped within the course of about 5 years to about 2/3 for, 1/3 against. And it's stuck there ever since for the last 15 years or so. How did the Human Rights Campaign and other advocacy groups manage this profound change in public opinion? How do we get people to change their values and their hearts on an issue like this? It's very emotional, and it was very stuck for decades and decades. It's by meeting people where they were
yes,
and being willing to say, "Hey, you're willing to come this far? Thank you. That's awesome. I appreciate that."
yes,
You meet someone who is mostly against you, but maybe not entirely. Great. It was by being accepting and welcoming the move toward you rather than tisking them for the distance they had yet to go.
I
And we've become, as a party, too censorious of people who aren't quite there or have some questions or are Seth Moulton and they say, gee, I'm really splitting my heart because I want transgender Americans to enjoy absolute equal protection under the law, but I get worried about transgender girls playing on girls' sports teams and whether that's fair to the other girls. Okay, not everyone is going to agree with him on that. And by the way, I've run against him in primaries, so it's like he and I aren't besties. But we have to be a party that is broad enough, accepting enough, and takes the approach of my friend from the Human Rights Campaign, takes a page out of that book from 15 years ago that says, okay, well, you know what? We agree on like 85% here.
Yeah,
So let's not go to war over those last 15%. You have a view that's completely legit and it's not hateful. It's not hateful. So let's let's keep working on this together. That's the kind of approach that I think more Americans would vibe with and that would allow us to focus on our core messages about affordability, economics, cost of living,
yeah, I would
and
agree.
others.
I actually, I would totally agree with that. I honestly just saw it on big news, well, not big news, but an update in the shutdown that I just wanted to share quickly. Um, So apparently Chuck Schumer is about to propose on the Senate floor with every Democrat behind him a plan to end the government shutdown, assuming Republicans agree to it. It's we'll reopen the government. We'll vote to do it if you give us a 1-year extension on the ACA credits. That's what we're asking for. Give us a 1-year extension. We can come back and revisit this next year, but 1-year extension will end the government shutdown. And I think that's stretchy because you can say we offered this, and you can potentially get a win out of it. And but you also saying like we actually have a plan to end it, not just come with us to a plan we want to, just saying we want to negotiate, but actually putting out a plan out there, saying we want to end this government shutdown. Why won't you do it? I think that's
Right. Yeah, this is the Democrats' clever way. Look, people like to shit on Chuck Schumer, and he's not the most effective messenger in the party. That
no.
said, he does know how to operate within the chamber. And essentially, what was happening, and you alluded to this a few minutes ago, is that Senate Majority Leader John Thune was basically going to jam Democrats by bringing a package to the floor that said, we want to end the shutdown. And what Schumer sounds like he's doing, I haven't seen the breaking news the way you have. What sounds like he's doing is he's trying to get there first and unjam the Democrats by making an offer and having the Republicans either accept it or turn it down,
Now the Democrats like John
taking the
Ossoff,
initiative.
and other
That's
people that are
right.
in
That's
swing states.
smart. It's smart tactics.
Things, things.
Right. Precisely. So, I mean, again, like I'm not if people say, "Look, I want to move on from Schumer," he's not an effective messenger of the party. Fine, I'm not gonna fight them on that. But he does know how to operate within the chamber, and this seems like the right tactic.
I would agree with that, and I'm aware that you have to head out, so I wanted to thank you
Oh
for.
man, yeah, I'm
I,
under deadlines here.
yeah, I wanted to thank you for taking uh 30 minutes out of your day to interview. And again, uh, What's Knowing is the name, right? What's Knowing.
Worthknowing.substack.com. I'm Matt
Maybe
Robison. If you
subscribe.
want to follow me personally and not my publication, I'm Matt Robison too. That's number 2 on Substack, but hopefully number 1 in your hearts.
Yes, please subscribe. He's great. And obviously subscribe to me. If you agreed, obviously you're here. So, but yeah, I will be posting this soon, and so the rest of our subscribers can see it.
All right. Thank you so much. And let's go out on giving our best Mamdani smile. You ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right. Thanks so much, man.
See ya. Thank you. So, I just want to do a quick. Does anyone have any questions? Just to me about anything having to do with the politics currently going on. I know it's a very crazy moment we live in. I'm gonna do like a short little Q&A if anyone has any questions. If not, I will end this Q&A and end the live. I'll give until like 2:38, 2:39. Okay. Well, it was great. It was great. I'm glad you guys. Thank you for all 37 people for joining, and I will be posting this very soon. Have a great day, and remember, this podcast, the Substack, is about we the people, not me, not you. We the people. And again, please share with your friends, family, and whoever else you think will care about democracy. And with that, I sign off.